I appreciate the opportunity being here. I didn't have the opportunity to come to this event last year, but I was here in 2021. And so when I got the email from Jeremy asking me to come, I was really excited because when we were here in 2021, one of my competitors was in my footsteps. And being the competitive guy that I am, it's like, look, I can't let that happen. So, and not to mention, I knew him. His name was Buddy Peterson. He was the COO at FracTech, and I'd known him for over 20 years. And so when I was sitting there watching him speak, it's like, oh, okay, now this year it's Calfrac, and this year it's our turn. So anyway, needless to say, I was excited to get the invitation. Just briefly about myself, it was interesting listening to CA talk because we're right at the same age. Our careers are very similar. I also graduated in 1984 from Texas Tech University, 39 years in the oil and gas business, so very similar to CA. So I want to show a quick video about Calfrac. So that video was shot in Pennsylvania with one of our crews out of our Smithfield, Pennsylvania district. It was the first crew that adopted the KCF technology. So a little bit about Calfrac. We started in 1999. We are a Canadian company. Our corporate headquarters is in Calgary. The first job that we did was in Canada. Calfrac is we have a very, very strong culture, very strong safety culture. I've never worked a place where the dedication and commitment to a company is more prevalent than it is with Calfrac. And to that point, one of the guys that I work with, have the pleasure of working with, he runs our maintenance facility in Beebe, Arkansas. He was like employee number 3 with Calfrac. I don't think he was on the first job that Calfrac did, but he was probably on the second. And he's here today, as a matter of fact. But anyway, Calfrac started in 1999 in Canada. We moved into the U.S. in the early 2000s, did our very first job in Colorado. And as you can see on the map, we're in all the major oil and gas basins in Canada and in the U.S. In the U.S., we're up in the Northeast, servicing the Utica and the Marcellus. We're very strong in the Rockies, all the way through the Rockies, up in the Bakken, and then also in the 2 major oil and gas plays in Canada. We became a public company, and then in the 2000s, we actually surpassed 1 million working horsepower. We are a publicly traded company. We're proud to say that we are the largest pressure pumping company in North America that's officed in Calgary. Currently in North America, we have 15 frac fleets, 5 in Canada and 10 in the US. So a little bit more about Calfrac. Currently our headcount across all our divisions is about 5,000 people. We have 1,000 in the U.S. As I mentioned earlier, we have 10 fleets working in the U.S., and all 10 of them have KCF working on them. We started with KCF in 2021, and through going on 3 years now, we've integrated from 1 fleet to 2, and then 4, and now we've got all 10 going. And it's really had a major impact on what we do and allowing us to get the success that we do have. So what do? We service the oil and gas business. We are classified as a pressure pumping company. So when you hear people talking about frac companies or frac jobs, that's what we do. So our customers are the Exxons and the EQTs and the BPs and the Continentals and that kind of thing. But what we specifically do is we pump. So when a E&P goes out, an Exxon or an EQT goes out and drills a well, the well is drilled, the well is cased, and then we come in and we pump a mixture of water, chemicals, and sand into the formation. So essentially, most of the wells in the U.S. today are anywhere between 10 and 15,000 feet. It's typically about a 5-inch piece of pipe that goes 3 to 4 miles into the ground. And under pressure, we pump water, sand, and chemicals. And the purpose of this is the formations that they're completing in North America have porosity, but they don't have any permeability. So you've got to create permeability in this rock, and that's why you pump the sand. The sand creates cracks, and then you create the permeability, and it lets the hydrocarbon it creates an avenue for the hydrocarbon to flow to the wellbore. So what we do is very, very, it's in a harsh environment. We're in the heat, we're in the cold, we're in the dust. If all that wasn't enough, we pump at very, very high pressures. We'll take, it's not uncommon for our pumps to be, say, 10 to 12,000 pounds surface treating pressure. And then we pump very large volumes. So the typical job that we do in the U.S. now is 100 barrels a minute. So to help you kind of equate that, if anybody has a swimming pool, swimming pools are 25 to 30,000 gallons. We'll empty that swimming pool in less than 5 minutes. And we're pumping all this down a 5.5 piece of casing. So as far as the sand volumes that we pump, most of our jobs are between 400,000 and 500,000 pounds of sand. And we'll do anywhere between 10 or 12 of those a day. So needless to say, what we're doing is pumping large amounts of fluid and sand in very, very harsh environments. Excuse me real quick. So when we started down this path, why did we need KCF? So one of our biggest spends that we have as a company is our maintenance capital. It's the cost to fix and replace all the piece parts on all of our equipment, on our blenders, on our pumps, and that type of thing. Aside from people, it's our biggest expense. In 2022, our maintenance capital budget was expected to be a little over $40 million. So one day, we were very familiar with KCF. We knew about some of the work that they had done with some of our competitors. So one day, Dave and I, the gentleman I was talking to you about, it's like we just weren't getting the life out of our major components. If we expected to get 6,000 hours out of a transmission, we were only getting 3. And not only were we failing them, we were catastrophically failing them. And so it's like, we got to try something. So we thought, well, we'll give KCF a try. And so we contacted them to try to help us with decreasing our major capital spend. And when I say we were destroying some stuff, we were grenading things. We would part drive lines, we would part power ends, and not only from a financial impact, but from a safety impact. Because if you start having these kind of issues, you've got people in and about the workspace. It became a safety problem. So when we first started with KCF, we started Q1 of 2021, and we had some challenges because I think everybody thought it was going to be an instant fix. I can't tell you how many questions I got from our upper management. Well, when are we going to see the return on investment? We're not seeing anything. And it's like, well, we have to get this integrated. We have to get the crews on location to adopt it. And we probably went the first 12 months, and we were making headway. We were doing some good, but it wasn't real material dollars. And probably after, I think it was between 12 and 14 months, it was like all of a sudden a light came on. And we started seeing improvement. We started seeing additional life out of our fluid ends. We would we track our pumps on number of strokes. So how many times that pump makes a stroke. That's how we track the life of those assets. And we started seeing our fluid end spend decrease a little bit. And we started to see our stroke count start to go up. So we were averaging 4 million strokes, and it kind of ticked up to 5. And then we started seeing some additional life out of our power ends. And then we weren't having catastrophic failures anymore. When we would lose a major component, well, it just washed out. We just washed the fluid in. Or maybe we had a transmission and we expected to get 8,000 hours out of it, and we got 7,500. So they were little incremental wins. But the big one came probably late 22. It was the second half of 22. And we have a district in Williston, North Dakota. It's our biggest district. We currently run 5 crews out of that district. It's not only the biggest district for the U.S. division, but it's the biggest district for Calfrac for the whole company. And we were going through transmissions in North Dakota like tinfoil. We were going through them so much that we had units sitting idle because we couldn't get another transmission. We were blaming the manufacturer of the transmission. We were blaming operators. We were really at our wits' end. And all of a sudden, our transmission usage in North Dakota started dropping. And we were getting more hours. And then we were getting the expected hours. And so the changes that we made, we started making some other changes because of what we learned with the vibration technology. And I'm pleased to say today, we're getting more hours out of our transmissions in North Dakota than we ever have before. This year in 2023, our transmission usage is going to be lower than our competitors. So those were the kind of things that we saw, but it took a while. It took a year before you could get all this integrated. So if you kind of look at this chart, when we started out, we were definitely at the low end of the learning curve. We were having catastrophic failures. There was no talk of preventive maintenance. We were just trying to quit blowing stuff up. And as I mentioned earlier, that's kind of how we progressed through this thing. And we quit blowing stuff up. We quit having catastrophic failures. Then we started easing into, well, now we can start being forward thinking and let's put some PM guidelines on some of this stuff. Then we were able to use, I'm having a technical problem here. I'm okay, but, oh, there we go. Let me go back. There we go. Sorry about that. So then we started using it to, instead of just focusing on the pump. So when I mentioned that we pump all these hundreds of thousands of gallons of fluid and all these pounds of sand, the pump is like the end of the process. We have a piece of equipment called a blender, which pulls all the fluid in, all the sand and all the chemicals, mixes it together, and then it supercharges the pump. And then the pump goes from up to 10,000 pounds and pumps it in the well. We were focusing on the pump as that was the source of our problem. But what KCF is somewhere in late 20, or in say late 21, 22, the vibration data took us back to the blender, and it's like the problem is starting over here. The problem's not with the pump. The problem is what the blender is creating. And so we took the sensors, we took them over to this other piece of equipment, and we found out that we were cavitating our pumps. We weren't getting enough fluid to the pump. The problem, a lot of the problem was not with the pump, it was with the piece of equipment. So it was like the tail wagging the dog. And so we didn't totally move to the blender, but then we started looking at things like, well, what's our discharge pressure? How many hoses are we running? How are those hoses configured? And then all of a sudden we took another step change on the life of our major components because we were just focusing on this piece of equipment when the problem was starting over here. I mentioned our major capital spend. We, in 2022, We were expected to spend about $40 million on major capital. We actually underspent our major capital budget by almost $12 million. And we were able to take that money, and for the first time in 10 years, we were actually able to go buy some new equipment. So instead of just fixing what I broke, we were able to go buy some new with the savings that we had. This is a kind of a quick summary. I was talking with Dave before the summit. To date, lifetime, I think we've saved almost $25 million of major components because of KCF. So I'm running out of time here, I'll go a little quicker. A couple of wins. So I mentioned, some of these things are so commonsensical. So I mentioned that we focused on the pump, but the problem was over here. This first one is we just simply were not giving enough discharge pressure to our pumps. If we were running the blender and let's say we were shooting for 90 pounds of discharge pressure, we upped it to 100 and 110, and all of a sudden the vibration dropped. And that's really what this one is. It shows that just simply by just raising the discharge pressure on the blender, that all my vibration on all my major components, on transmissions, power ends, fluid ends, it all dropped. Very, very simple, very commonsensical. This is a summary of probably the biggest 5. The one I want to point out here is, so when we pump one of these jobs, we'll start out just pumping water, and then we pump a mixture of sand and water, and at the very end, we cut the sand and we just pump water again. We noticed our vibration when we flushed, when we cut the sand, our vibration on our pumps skyrocketed. It's like, well, yeah, because you cut 30% of your volume out of the sand, so you're starving the pump. So very simple, very commonsensical. When we go to flush, raise the discharge pressure, and guess what? My vibration drops. So it's things that a 39-year guy should know, but we just couldn't see the forest for the trees. These are a couple of other wins. This is one where our crews pump 24 hours a day, and we had noticed a distinct difference between the daytime crew and the nighttime crew on vibration. And it was just simple human error things that they had dropped their discharge pressure, or the tank we were pulling out of only had 4 feet, so the hydrostatic pressure on the blender was too low. But we noticed it because of the vibration technology, and we knew it was a human thing because it was a stark difference between day and night shift. And that one savings was almost $400,000. Then we had another one that was almost $500,000, very similar thing, where we had a boost pump that just simply the impeller on the pump was not working accurately, so our boost pressure was too low. So it was just a matter of just raise the boost pressure, and all of my pumps seemed to line out. So kind of going back to the chart of where we are in the journey, we were very rudimentary when we started down this path, but I'm very proud to say that all 10 of the crews today have machine IQ on them. So instead of my operators just sitting in the data van, we have these vans on location when we're performing these treatments, and that's where we kind of run the job. And initially, the guys were just looking at little squiggly lines and trying to interpret what that meant. Well, we've taken the next step with machine IQ, and now through algorithms and learning the nature of our pumps and what this signal means, now they have a screen that just shows pump specific, and it's telling them detailed problems. Like on pump number 5, you now have a packing problem. So we're much more responsive. Guys don't have to diagnose it. The technology is telling them, here's your problem and here's what you need to go do to fix it. The other thing that machine IQ is telling us is that we're getting a lot more catches because the guys aren't having to diagnose it. It's telling them we're much more responsive, and we're getting 4 times as many catches as we used to. So this is a picture that I'm very proud of. This is that crew in Pennsylvania. Being competitive like we are, we have a crew competition. with the KCF data. So we've got KPIs and measurements, things like ROI and best catches and vibration. And this is the crew that won the best district for KCF data for 2022. And it made me proud. First off, this is a great shot. I don't know who took this picture, but it's an awesome shot. But it made me proud that the first crew that started and adopted it was the crew that won. And you know, at the end of the day, we're a business where my competitors have the same equipment as I do. So what makes the difference between us and them and servicing our customers is the people. And these are the guys that made it happen. Anyway, it's been a great journey where I am excited with Machine IQ, where it's going to take us this year, and just have had a great experience with KCF. So thank you all very much. Thank you for letting me come and speak.